Casey, I heard what you said at the end of Way Too Early about the warning from the Biden camp. And it is an important warning with 19 days to go. We're going to show some polls that show Joe Biden far ahead. But if you talk to the Biden people, they do say it's much closer. And there's a great article this morning in the Times by Tom Setzel. And he brings up, he talks about how much closer this race could be. First of all, there are a lot of white voters without college degrees who are registering, who didn't vote in 2016. And also, he quotes Dave Wasserman's data. In Florida, since the state's March primary, 195,000 Republicans have been added to the rolls, only 98,000 Democrats. In Pennsylvania, since June, Republicans plus 135,000, Democrats only 57,000. In North Carolina, since March, Republicans up 83,000, Democrats only 38,000. And Arizona's the exception where Democrats are outperforming Republicans. But Etzel lays out quite a few data points that should give a lot of Democrats reasons to worry with 19 days to go and to stop them from being as complacent as they were 4 years ago when Mika and I and Willie and others would be yelled at for simply suggesting that Donald Trump could be elected president of the United States and get 270 electoral votes.
Well, I remember being laughed at, Joe, when I said on this very program that when I was covering Hillary Clinton's campaign in the final weeks that it didn't feel like a winning one. I mean, her staffers laughed at me. As it turns out, that was exactly what was happening. And, you know, I think it's a combination of things. And you're right to point out to these signs that are under the radar. I mean, that is what happened in 2016. There was a lot going on under the radar that people missed. There are some signs that there is more potential Republican strength than perhaps is being accounted for. There is also this question about people potentially getting complacent, this assumption that everything is fine. I don't need to vote. Now, I think a major difference is people are living lives where everything is very much not fine. This is not a situation where it's been 8 years of a Democratic administration, a status quo, an economy that's growing. Right? People are suffering and hurting. So I think that potentially is different. But Jen O'Malley Dillon, who has gotten a lot of credit for making a very strong run on Joe Biden's behalf, people like her. People think she's doing a good job. That warning, I think, very important and also really telling. I mean, the reality is we still are basically a 50-50 country. If Donald Trump can't get to 50%, then obviously he's going to have a real challenge actually pulling this out. But especially considering how many completely unpredictable things have happened in the year 2020, it seems like a warning that is pretty relevant right about now, just 19 days out.
Yeah, it certainly does. Thank you so much for sticking around, Casey. We appreciate it. And, you know, Willie, after the arrogance we saw from the Democrats and, yes, from the mainstream media 4 years ago, if you even suggested that Donald Trump might get to 270 electoral votes, complete arrogance and a complete mocking attitude. This serves as a reminder and sort of a bucket of cold ice water over everybody's head that's saying this race is over, that we still have a long way to go. Etzel also quotes a Democratic strategist who's closely following day to day, and he wrote in a privately circulated newsletter that Etzel got a hold of, quote, since last week, the share of white non-college over 30 registrations in the battleground states has increased by 10 points compared to September 2016. And Democratic margins have dropped 10 points to just 6 points. And there are serious signs of political engagement by white non-college voters who had not cast ballots in previous elections. All of this bad news for Democrats and something that may be happening under the radar. I do, just to be even-handed here, Etzel also says, for instance, that Biden may be losing support among Hispanic voters in a way Hillary Clinton didn't, but that's more than offset by the number of white Catholics that are breaking his way and other demographic groups that are actually breaking back Biden's way that weren't with him in 2016. So this is not to say Joe Biden's going to lose, but Etzel brings up a lot of great points to suggest exactly what Joe Biden's campaign manager said last night. Hey, this race a lot closer than people on Twitter think it is. And if you've talked to people privately, as I have on both sides, they will tell you that this isn't a race of 7, 10, 12 points. In the swing states, it's 1, 2, maybe 4 in Michigan, maybe 4 in Wisconsin, maybe 3, 4 in Pennsylvania, maybe 2 in North Carolina. It is tight. And any shift, dramatic shift in the next 2 weeks towards Donald Trump makes it a toss-up election.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.